Well, we are here today for Habit 4, Think Win-Win Principles of Interpersonal Leadership. Another great chapter, reading 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And our conversation, like I said, today will be on the paradigms of independence and habit number 4, win-win, which I love. Win-win or no deal.
Win-win or no deal.
Right.
Straight out of the, what do they used to call it? The Y243TS?
Yes, that
R2D2?
thing. Yes, that thing. C3PO R2D2 Y24s.
There you go. Bless their hearts.
Bless their hearts. David, just to catch you up, KW had it was like
Y4
2K
CT. It all stood for
being awesome, being
integrity first, win-win or there's no deal.
Oh,
but win-win there's no deal is like one of the top ones.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. It was a great thought. The acronym was way too long. 4 letters max, okay?
Right.
WWND, win-win or no deal.
Right.
WW. Oh, that's a good one. That is a good one.
Yes. Anyway, all right, David, we will let you lead the conversation if you want to hop right in. And I love your hair, by the way. I really do like it. I think you should wear it.
Thank you very much. Awesome. So, jumping into the paradigms of interdependence. So, interdependence, I think that one's kind of awesome. So, when we go to the emotional bank account, what were you guys' thoughts on the emotional bank account? Was it kind of weird reading through it, or was it kind of I don't know. For me, it was kind of interesting. It was it almost kind of created a different view on how to effectively work with people. And it really kind of talks about that emotional bank account. I kind of hear you guys talk about this all the time. When you're going to a brokerage or whatever, how are they adding value? Those are those deposits into the bank account. And it's just like, if you really think about it, the folks that are leaving have those negative bank balances. And it's like, maybe if they had a positive balance, maybe they would have stayed, maybe they would have done really well. So what would you guys' thoughts as reading through the emotional bank account?
So for me, that was a huge aha in the book. I love the definition, first off. Like I've always been cognizant, I think, of how my actions make somebody else react, or how my word or my communication skills make somebody act or react. But for me, this particular chapter and that conversation, the chapter brought me back to my divorce. It was like, good God, if we could have found a way in our marriage to deposit positive into that emotional bank account, would I've even gotten divorced, right? My ex-husband's not a bad person. We just came to a point in our marriage and in our relationship where being right was more important than being together. And so I think that, for me, as I read through this, it just kind of gave that aha a definition. Because since I've moved past that marriage, and since I've studied lots of different things, taken lots of courses, taken lots of classes, read lots of books, my ability to communicate and my understanding that if you say, I'm sorry, but, that empties that emotional bank account, right? And I think you can utilize that in your business. I think you can utilize that, take today, for example. The house I showed was unlisted. It was on market last week. My client was out of town, called somebody on Monday, said, hey, listen, please let us see your house. They let us in today, and they were just so frustrated with the market and with their agent. And as I walked through the home, I just said, oh, listen, let's next time you list, do this, and this. And they were like, oh my goodness. And I just think that, maybe their house wouldn't have sold if I had it listed, but I don't think they'd have been frustrated at the end, because I think they would have understood, by taking time to deposit into those things, it builds trust, it builds relationships. And to me, making deposits into an emotional bank account is going to keep relationships together. And that's what helps those relationships fare the bad weather. And in business, like that's what matters, right? When your client's house doesn't sell, I just tell a client this past week, she had her house listed for, way more than what it should have been listed for. She called me, she's like, my house is not selling. I'm like, yeah, I know. So she let that realtor go. She hired me and I talked her into dropping her price $40,000. Like that's a major price decrease after only 2 weeks of being on the market. And why I was able to do that and the other agent wasn't was because I continued to deposit positive conversations into that bank account. And I didn't just come saying, hey, let's do this. I came with her data and things she could trust. So when I say something, it holds water instead of being like a colander where, okay, maybe it holds a drop or two, but the majority of it falls through that colander. Loved it though. Love that definition.
When I had in my last job, the sales company that we were with, and start by saying this book is so cool because so many different trainings and books that you read and ideas and whatever are like a branch off of this book. Like this book is almost like the blueprint for like all these other, and the next one that we're going to talk about, number 5, which I don't know if we're going to talk about right now or not. I know we talked about maybe doing 4 and 5. But
we were doing personal the interdependence and
right. But and looking at the next one too, just talk like empathy and doing stuff like that. This goes back to that book that we may do next, which is Never Split the Difference. We talk about stuff like that. But anyway, this chapter, I had a training class in sales when I first got in, and they talked about everybody has a stroke meter. Everybody wants a stroke, like a cat, you just want a stroke. How are you doing today? You look great today. Hey, that was a great thing you did. Everybody, no matter how big and bad and whatever you are, somebody gives you a compliment or gives you a stroke, it fills you up. It helps out. And so this was a good way to kind of put that in writing.
Absolutely.
Everything all right over there, Laura?
I'm sorry, my husband is distracting me. I'm trying to kick him out of the office.
Oh, that's Hey, Craig.
He just slammed my door. Sorry.
We're not going to dig deeper into that.
I'm sorry. I was trying to be incognito and I was failing miserably.
Oh, that's funny. Sweet. Well, moving right along. So the 6 paradigms of human interaction. So you guys are familiar with that: the win-win, win-lose, lose-win, so on and so forth. So prior to kind of reading this chapter, is there any of these that you guys kind of favor, or not necessarily favor, kind of historically kind of leaned more towards? I know for me personally, it's interesting. I kind of go more towards lose-win in some cases, but it's usually if, something doesn't benefit me so much, in which case then I'm trying to go to, I don't know, probably just win, right? But after reading this, it's a little different. But for you guys, did you guys have anything that you kind of lean towards?
Well, as we joked about in the beginning, talking about, we both have background with the Big Red Brokerage over at KW, and that was like one of their things was win-win or no deal. So you're kind of already kind of pre-programmed with that, which obviously came from this. I mean, they didn't even try to rebrand it, which is hilarious. Right. But I mean, but it's the truth. I mean, win-win or no deal. I mean, the reality is, like in real estate, the buyer wants something, the seller wants something. A lot of times the biggest issue as realtors is sometimes realtors play king of the mountain, and we get in the way and we become a pain in the butt for our people. Like we're trying to negotiate and whatever. And the reality is we're working for our people, and we can create what we think is a win-lose by beating the other guy up, the other agent. And you're actually creating a loss for your people because you're not. So it's like you have to keep in mind all those different. So it's just important that everybody's looking to get to the same spot. Everybody wants to get to the closing table. I always say the The buyers want to buy, the sellers want to sell. We want to go to closing. Everybody wants to end up at the exact same spot. We need to figure this out.
Right.
You know, even when the poop hits the fan, especially when the poop hits the fan, somebody has to be the grown up and say, look, we can all win, right? How are we going to make this happen? Whereas sometimes, you know, people will just take that opportunity to kick doors in and, you know, take over the deal. And you can, if you go into it as a win-lose, you can win that battle, but you'll lose the war.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's important to notate that there's lose-lose, win-lose, lose-win, win-win, or win-win or no deal. And I think that when you can go from win-win to win-win or no deal, I think that's where the magic starts to happen. I know for me, you know, I tell my clients that on the front end, you know, especially sellers, right? Because sellers always feel like, except for the last, 12, 18 months, of course, sellers felt like they were getting the better end of the deal. But at the end of the day, you know, a lot of times you find a seller getting ready to sell their house. I don't want to pay for that. I don't want to give them that. But then when the shoe's on the other foot and they're your buyer, you have to bring them back down to reality and go, well, Mr. Seller, you remember so-and-so was buying your house and you didn't want to do that. Well, now we've got you under contract, so we've got to go find you a house. And so I just find that when you set the standard up front in all of my meetings, in all of my relationships, it's win-win or no deal. I don't want to be in a relationship that's uneven. I think to your point, David, I think for 4 years of my life, I was a lose-win person because I didn't realize, I knew it was there because I had heard win-win or no deal before, but I don't think I understood the value of win-win or no deal. And I think a lot of times I found myself being the one losing. Okay, this contract's about to fall apart. I'm going to give up $500 so it doesn't. The other agent wasn't willing to do that. The seller wasn't willing to do that. And the buyer wasn't willing to do that. Why was I? Right. And it was a consistent, you know, it felt like a win-win, but it really wasn't. There was definitely a loser somewhere in there. And, you know, I would say a lot of agents probably have the win-lose perspective. They don't have the win-win. They sell their services on the fact that they screw the other person. And I'm going to tell you, the agents that I've come across that do that, they're my arch nemesis. And like, I will pre-warn a client, hey, listen, if you like this house, I've done business with this agent and this is how they negotiate. And a lot of times my clients are like, well, the house ain't worth it at that point.
Yep.
Right. They don't want to move forward. And the beauty of, you know, where I am in business is I've done business with a lot of agents in Atlanta. I know a lot of the agents in Atlanta, and there are a few I will actually refer a client out before I will go under contract with them. And for me, I don't want that reputation, right? Like my big why is having a positive impact on 1 million people before I pass. Well, if my perspective is not win-win or no deal, right? My big why, my vision, like is not in line with my actions. And so I think it's super, super important. And what Steve was saying earlier, where like you might win the war, but you don't win the battle. The few times I have been in contracts or in situations where it's not a win-win deal, to your point, Steve, somewhere along the line, it blows up. Maybe when they're getting ready to sell their house, or, you know, maybe when they're getting ready to do an event or whatever that looks like, but somewhere down the line, you call it karma, call it whatever you want to call it, it comes back. Right. And so you get what you put out. And I think this chapter did a phenomenal, phenomenal job of making it very clear what each of those 5 options were and what they look like on the backside of making the decision to go in with that perspective.
So those win-lose agents that you guys are kind of talking about that, you know, essentially are kind of winning the battle, but not the war. If you really think about it, I think that even goes back to like that emotional bank account. Think about it, you know, as an agent, you're going for the long term, or at least I believe it to be. And so you're talking relationships. So it's you go for a win-lose, that's a huge withdrawal. And if you weren't putting in deposits to begin with, well, now you've got negative balances. And if you've got negative balances all over Atlanta, well, darn, what you gonna do? Move?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, so not winning the war. So yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, in real estate, I mean, and it's probably like this in all careers or whatever. I mean, you're going to need a favor from somebody. You're going to need
Absolutely.
to go off to the side and say, what can we do to make this happen? You know what I mean?
Right.
And I mean, I'm blessed because I had the foresight the same way Laura talked about it. I mean, and that's why sometimes we have to be careful. Our clients and the people across this table, we may be only doing one deal with this client.
Mm-hmm.
The people across the table, we may be doing deals with for the next 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, while we have to serve them, we do have to we got to keep everybody, in that mindset of I'm not trying to step on anybody, because
Right.
you never know when you're going to call somebody and say, look, I need you to look at this or whatever,
Or it may be as simple as, oh my God, you've got a listing. I'm out of town. Can you open the door for my client?
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
And if it's somebody you run into and it's been a negative experience, they're going to be like, fuck off. No, I'm not opening the door for your client. I'm taking 2% of your commission.
Right.
Whereas if it's somebody you've had great rapport with and you've made those deposits, and I actually have realtors who will pick up the phone and call me first before their homes go listed, because our transactions were so awesome. Hey, Laura, by the way, I have a home listed. Here's where it is. We would love to co-op with you again. Who do you know? Right. And I think when you take on the perspective of win-win or no deal, well, it just starts that major ball rolling down the hill in a positive direction. And as that ball gains momentum, it just doesn't stop. Right. I mean, what value is that for my buyers? Look at all the off-market deals I get before the rest of the market sees it. It's not my listings, but I probably get 3 or 4 calls a week. Hey, by the way, who do you know?
Right. Yeah. Right. And to you guys' point, it's not limited to real estate. Like even in CPA and consulting, as a consultant, I'm expected to have all the answers. I don't have all the answers, but between me, my colleagues, and whatever CPA firm I'm working with, we say in the consulting business, consult. So if there's something, a client wants, I had to go talk to a colleague, get that information. But it's just like if I was doing win-lose with all of my colleagues, well, now I'm going to get outdated, because either I'm going to have to spin my wheels figuring stuff out, which takes longer, or people I'm just going to lose clients. They're going to say, well, we keep having to go to so-and-so to get this answer. Not to hire them, So yeah, no, it's not just in real estate. And then also, so Steven talks about, what is it? So being courageous and considerate. Do you guys find difficulty managing both? For me, definitely. It's kind of hard to be considerate and then turn around and also be courageous enough to be considerate for myself. I'll do it. But, I just feel like, if you don't have that courageousness and you don't have that consideration, you can't have win-win, and you can't even think about win-win or no deal. So how do you guys kind of go about that? Do you find challenges with being courageous and considerate? And kind of how do you guys kind of go about it?
I think that to be considerate, some people may almost look at that as a weakness. Like if I'm willing to say, if I'm willing to come and say, look, you and I need to get on the phone and talk this over, and we need to figure this out, whatever. Some agents may look at that as saying, I got him right where I want him. I'm going to kick his butt. I'm going to what, you know what I mean? And it's like, you almost have to let your guard down a little bit to be considerate, which is where the courageous comes in, but at the same time, I mean, if you were truly going to be win-win or no deal, I mean, that's the way you have to be.
Right.
I mean, it's like, because you have to show I don't say show your cards, but you've got to, it's hard to call an agent sometimes and kind of, I don't want to say grovel, but kiss a little booty for your people, but just give them a stroke. Hey, beautiful house. My people love it. You obviously did a great job. We want to put an offer, blah, blah, blah. look, I know that you're getting, you got a bunch of offers, but the place is great. Trying to put yourself in those positions, it takes courage to not just come in and say, look, you need to close it right now because we're going to put in an offer, and damn it, I'm this and that, and blah, blah, blah. It's like that's not going to get you where you need to be. So yeah, you almost have to kind of take a step back to be considerate, and that takes courage.
Right.
Yeah. For me, I kind of compared this to a contract blowing up, right? Like, oh my God, we just found out that the buyer is going to need an extra 7 days to close. Seller's going to be pissed because the seller's got a house they're buying. So it's a domino effect a lot of times in real estate. But I think, like, for me, we have a lot of agents that'll wait literally till doomsday. By the way, guess what? Because they're trying to correct the problem on the backside. And I think it takes a lot of courage to pick that phone up and to be considerate of the other side, right? But by doing that and not waiting until D-Day, giving that seller a 2-week heads up, hey, listen, here's where we are. I know we were pre-approved and I can't help it. The buyer went and bought a couch, okay? So we're trying to, we're paying that couch off.
Right.
They're going to get, they're going to get a gift letter from mom, but that means we've got to verify that, and it takes 3 days to verify the gift letter or whatever. But we want to let you know that now so that you can make plans, because what a lot of agents will do, and I'm guilty in this as well sometimes, especially if I think the problem is going to be corrected and we don't need to get everybody up in arms. But there are situations where you got to just pick up the phone and you got to call. And I think that, picking up the phone and being courteous, not because I'll get a phone call from an agent sometimes and they're like running their client down. Oh, my buyer's an idiot. They bought a car and, now we got, there's nothing courteous about that phone conversation. I can't stand. I mean, I won't get a bigger withdrawal out of my emotional bank account with another agent in a negative manner than them picking up the phone and calling me and running their client in the ground. Like, if you got a shitty client, go tell your husband or your best friend that's a realtor. Don't tell me as the co-oping agent.
Or tell the client.
Well, so there's
say something.
Right. So there's that. But it's those kind of situations, a lot of times, to me, the ones that matter, the ones that move mountains and that make the difference, that you can come up and have a conversation with somebody. And I think a lot of times you find that if there is animosity, if there is negativity, or if there is a negative amount in that bank account, a lot of times it's just two people have two different perspectives. It's not that somebody's right or somebody's wrong, but it takes a courageous person to say, hey, listen, let's have a conversation about this. Like towards the end of the chapter, when they were talking about the two companies needing to split ways, like they were looking at $100,000 plus argument in court, this court case that was going to be a couple $100,000 between the two parties, and against, the attorneys and everybody else's better judgment, they said, listen, let's just talk. And that showed, huge courage on the part of the person that said, hey, let's do this and not let it go to court. And two, they found a medium road, a middle ground where they both were happy. And, did somebody give a little bit and maybe not get everything they wanted potentially? But at the end of the day, that bravery and that ability to communicate in a clear, concise manner that didn't make everybody feel threatened ended in resolution and a friendship and a relationship that was saved, as opposed to animosity and negative feelings and financial strain and all of that kind of stuff. So for me, being brave and being courteous go hand in hand a lot of times when a situation seems like it's just desolate and derelict and it's not going to make anything out of it.
Right. Steve, one thing that you said that I thought was interesting, where you were saying, considerations almost kind of seen as weak, which honestly, I kind of agree with that. Like, I think a lot of the times people do kind of see it as weak, whereas I may have agreed with that to an extent prior to reading Never Split the Difference. I think you mentioned it a couple of times, because in there he calls it technically, and it's actually one of his strongest negotiation tactics. It's, he breaks it down here and talks about, consideration incurred. So it kind of goes back to what you were saying, Steve, where it's like this is almost kind of like a guide, and then each little small section kind of branches off to something else.
It goes into different books.
Right, absolutely. So one more question I have for you guys. So as you build your teams, how do you get your team into that win-win or no deal mindset?
So I'll start on this one. This morning, when Louis was presenting this video to me, the biggest thing that I took away from that video was something he said in it, and he mentioned what kind of boss I was. I used to be a person that ruled with an iron fist. It was my way or the highway, and I didn't give a fuck. Get out or get on board, and that was really my perspective. And so for me, over the last probably 10 years, I've done a lot of self-growth. I've read a lot of books. I've taken courses. I've taught courses.
You teach them very well.
I teach them amazing. They weren't English, okay? They were definitely not English courses. But Louis made mention this morning how he's not an employee. He's part of the team. And so for me, when I have a problem with somebody or when I need to communicate something that's negative, I use the shit sandwich all the time. Positive, negative, positive. You're doing great. Here's what we need to change. Here's how we're going to change it and make it awesome. Or here's something else you're doing great. And so they start with a good feeling. Okay, maybe the emotions get a little like, oh gosh, how can I fix that? But I think by doing those kind of things and making sure, I consistently tell my people, you're doing awesome. Like, thank you. I appreciate what you're doing. David was coaching me actually a while ago when we were writing some new mission statements and vision statements for the company. But as I was bringing Gladys in and we were creating these roles, you told me, he said, make them part of those decisions. Make them part of writing the mission statement for your business. So my guys actually, they feel like they own part of this business. And they know how much money I make, and it's not a small amount. They know how much I share with them of that, right? I think, when you look at these VAs that are in the Philippines or whatever, and we get so excited as Americans, they're like, oh yeah, we'll pay work for $4 an hour. And I think you get so wrapped up in how little it's costing you that, and whether it's a VA that works for cheap or people here that are positions below us, I think it's very easy to lose sight of they're human too. They have needs too. They've got emotions too. They've got all those things that they need. And you've got to consistently fill that cup, because I have found if you fill the cup with positive things, when you do have to come to them and have a conversation, I'm never angry. Okay, maybe sometimes, something will get posted. I'm like, shit. That does not look like somebody who speaks English posted it. But I don't go and yell or get angry. I mean, I'll call David and we laugh about it, and then I'll have a conversation with her. Whereas I think before, if we'd have been having this conversation with me 10 years ago, I'd have been like, no, fuck that. I built this business. I run this business. Nobody else put their blood, sweat, and tears in this business. It is my way or the highway. And listening to my guys, opening up those lines of communication. One, it makes them have ownership in my business, even though their name's not on the title as owner. They have ownership. They care, right? They want us to succeed. And two, when you give them the reins to fail forward in a safe environment where they feel that that's acceptable and it's not going to be a negative deposit if there's a mistake, people are amazing. The stuff that your team will do, and I could have cried this morning. No one in my 42 years of life, and I've had lots of people work for me, lots of people, no one in 42 years of being a business owner has anyone ever said, you changed my life. Happy birthday. Thank you. We love you and we need you around. Most times, birthday boss in the end. Right? But filling up those emotional needs of employees and building your team from a true team, a true win-win or no deal. If I close, my guys get bonused. If we get leads in that they brought in, even if it don't close, they get a bonus. They are working hard, and I will never have anybody under this roof that does not have that attitude. You don't have the win-win or no deal, and you got to have the no deal part.
Right.
It's got to be ingrained that we will walk away before we take advantage of somebody. And I think that, you know, as you're building your team and as you're coaching those people and you're growing those people, you have two choices. You can grow them in the direction of staying with you forever, or you can grow them in the direction of taking you and using you for what they need and then moving on.
Right. Right. Steve, anything to add to that?
She was just rolling.
Right,
there were a couple
honestly.
things that I was like, damn, she was just rolling. Oh, what was it? All right, so I just hired my first like official. She's a friend of mine, and I've been thinking and thinking, who do I get? Who do I get? And like we went out to lunch, or she came over or something. I was like, Helen, this is it. And I said something to Erin, and she's like, oh my goodness, she'd be perfect. And I didn't know if, you know, how much, and I was thinking 20 hours, but she would do 20 hours. And she was like, I can't do 20 hours. I can do like 10 a week. I'm like, 10 a week's perfect because I can give her stuff to do 10 hours. But we've been on like Zoom calls, talking about stuff. I have her doing stuff. She's doing great right out of the gate. Shh, quiet. Sorry, dog. That was not a win-win, no deal thing. I just told her what. That was a win-lose.
One.
Yeah, absolutely.
It could be quiet and I'll give you a treat, and then it's a win-win.
There you go. So we brought her in, and just on I was like, you know what? First night, I sent her. I text her, say, hey, I'm putting together something. What's your favorite restaurant over in Suwanee where you live? She said, oh, we go to blah blah blah. Sent her a $50 gift card and said, I'm so excited you're part of the team. Y'all go out to have dinner. We'd love to have you. And just like that, like she was so excited about it and whatever. And we're friends. We've been friends forever. But just like that little thing, like as a welcome to the team, like you're not just filling this little role that I have and I need you to do this and that. Damn it. You know, it's like you said, I think before when I was on a team and when you're in sales, think to yourself, like sales runs the ship. It's cute having all these other people over here on the side, but the salespeople run the ship. That's kind of, and that's a very arrogant and very not win-win or no-lose deal. Win-win, no, you know, that's not the way to approach it. Now that I have my own business, I've been in it for long enough. I mean, you realize it takes everybody, and if the right people aren't on the bus helping out and pointing the right direction, it's going to suffer. You know, so that's a big part of it too, is just, you know, having that kind of empathy or whatever for everybody.
Right.
As you grow your team or grow a family or whatever it is, I mean, you got a choice. You can either make everybody, I'm not going to say an even player on an even playing field, right? Because my kids are below me,
Right.
but they still have a voice, right? And I think it's that point that we all just need to drive home. No matter what your situation is, you gotta come out positive on the back end for everybody. And sometimes I'll even explain to clients or to my guys that work for me, I'm like, win-win or no deal is subjective, right? If somebody's getting a divorce and they just need the house sold because the most important thing to do is to be able to get the judge to sign on the piece of paper that we're divorced, the seller may sell for under fair market value and the buyer may get a great deal. Well, the win for the buyer is they get a great deal. The win for the seller is that husband of theirs is now an ex, right?
Right.
Felicia. You know, so I think that you've got to look at each situation subjectively as well, because somebody on the outside looking in may go, oh my God, that seller just got screwed. They lost 50 grand. Well, that 50 grand may have been worth not sitting on market for 6 months in a market like this.
They may have paid 75, 50's a deal.
So we got a couple more minutes left here. So one more thing I kind of wanted to go through just briefly is in the book we kind of talk about systems and processes within the win-win portion. And so Laura, I was actually getting kind of excited as you were kind of talking earlier. So I feel like with the systems and the processes, he kind of talks about what is it like? Essentially, like setting up bonus structures or setting up aligning reward systems. And so I do a lot of that at work, kind of seeing how large companies kind of align their systems and align their reward systems. And so what I found is, of course, the salary is like, it's not added to the bank account. And then the benefits, as much as you would think it would, is also not added to the bank account. Now, bonuses will add to the bank account, but the more buy-in you get for what's called tone at the top, and that's just management kind of pushing down rules, regulations, how the company should be operating. The more buy-in you get from your team, that's an emotional deposit. That's emotional bank account deposit. And I feel like the more you do that, the stronger your systems are, because now your team, it's a team. Laura, just like you said, they're not employees, it's a team.
Well, they have ownership, right? Mm-hmm. Ownership gives a higher level of commitment and dedication than it just being a job. I mean, nobody's ever going to own the Lerman team.
Exactly.
They will 100% own their job. And if somebody rolls, Louis never going anywhere because I'm not going to let him ever. But let's say he moves up, right? We've got some goals for him. Louis got a pretty long goal of retiring at like 40.
Right.
And working for me, he realistically can do that. We can set him up over the next 20 years for him to retire at 40 or 45 at a young age. Mm-hmm. But, as we progress and our business grows, my objective is to grow him. Mm-hmm. And when someone new comes into his position, if they're like, oh, well, this is a better way of doing that, Louis and I are going to listen because they're going to have ownership in that role. It's not a role to fill by a warm body. It's a role to be filled with someone who understands the value of win-win or no deal, and they have that ownership.
Just make sure they document it.
Right. That's your job.
Awesome. Well, sweet. So that really kind of takes us through these last two chapters. Any closing thoughts? And I think the next chapter is the 5.
Yep. Next chapter, chapter 5. Seek first to understand and then to be understood. Principles of empathetic communication. That's about an hour and a half read time, and that's kind of what we're keeping at our max. So I would say let's do that one, and then the next one is like an hour and 15 minutes and an hour and 6 minutes. So let's do chapter 5 this time, and then 6 and 7 on the next one. Does that work for everybody?
Works for me.
Working. All right, we're almost out of time, y'all.
See y'all Monday.
All right, y'all.
Tuesday.
Tuesday.